Solo Leveling is one of the most interesting manhwa, light novel, and anime that's released in recent date. And I think there's a big reason behind that. But first off, if you don't know what solo leveling is, it's basically where this guy is the weakest person with superpowers, I guess you could say, in human existence. And after some unfortunate events, essentially ends up unlocking a system that allows him to gain more and more superpowers is the best way to put it. And going ahead, there is going to be some spoilers. So, why do I think it's good? First off, I think system animes are just good in general. I think when there's a good system layout, it's good. I think the animation is good, right? I think that they put a lot of budget, a lot of time, a lot of effort into the anime as an overall, and into the manhwa as an overall. And I think that those things combined is what makes it really good. And overall, the storytelling is actually pretty good, even though there is a lot of parts I don't like about the story 100%. But it doesn't change that there is some good aspects behind it. It plays on the trope of someone basically being nothing and gaining everything that they've ever desired in their life. And I think that's one of the biggest tropes that people enjoy watching on a day-to-day basis. But the big issues come in the gaps in the story, or not really the gaps per se, but more so the parts that don't make sense. So in this world, when you gain your superpower or your system or whatever you basically want to call it, you can no longer get any stronger. But this is a lie instantly. This is a lie you were told in the first basically 10 seconds of reading this or watching this. And how is this a lie, you may ask? Well, let's say you are a average person. A average person doesn't go to the gym, they don't run, they don't work out in any way, shape, or form, and you unlock superpowers, right? And maybe the superpower is you can control fire magic. Okay, cool. Well, how can you get stronger outside of being able to just control fire magic? Well, I don't know. There's this really crazy thing called stamina. And if you go and let's say you start running all the time or you start lifting weights, it's like, yeah, maybe it won't make your fire magic overall stronger, but it would also still make you a stronger person, right? So it doesn't make your ability stronger, but it makes you as a human being stronger. And this is something solo leveling flops on a bunch. Now, there is some stuff here and there that they do it with, but the main character in particular has been a what they call is a hunter for basically years at this point, from our understanding when we're introduced to him in the story, and he is the weakest hunter of all mankind. And you know what's crazy is with this, he doesn't train in his sword skills or his dagger skills at all, even though that's his primary weapon. He doesn't train his body at all. He doesn't train his mind at all. He doesn't train his stamina at all. He is literally what you would basically imagine if a guy barely ate any food and never trained a day in his entire life. That's honestly the best way that I could put it. Like when the story begins, and there's so many other stories that do this too. And this is one of the biggest things that always irks me is they always talk about how weak they are or whatever, but the MC they have to force be 10 times weaker than the average person would actually think of with their willpower. And I'll use My Hero Academia as a side reference for this. So in My Hero Academia, the main character, before he basically meets the strongest hero in existence, he essentially doesn't decide to train a day in his life. Keep in mind, he wants to be a hero. That's his number one desire in the world is to be a hero, and he doesn't train at all. And the same thing in solo leveling. He knows he has to be a hunter to help his family pay for bills or whatever, but he doesn't train at all. And there is a slight argument of oh, well, he's in the hospital a lot, so he wouldn't be able to gain muscle because he has to heal or whatever. But it's I think healing, the instant that you introduce healing, heals muscles, tissue, whatever, you get a instant cheat code for essentially working out. Because he could legit go in, work out, go to a dungeon, which is what they're rating in the show, right? He'd go to a dungeon, and then when his healer heals him, his muscles would get healed, and then on top of that, he would get healed himself. You know, but then it begs the differ: is the healing healing, or is it time reversal? Because that's a whole different topic. It's probably time reversal, and that's probably how they justify it. But yeah, so this is why a lot of people don't like the plot in the show. Essentially, it is the baseline is they just do small gaps like this constantly, right? So when he's getting stronger, for example, he's getting stronger, and in the light novel and in the manhwa, they show a lot of in between things. They make him more human because when he's getting stronger in the show, he's just getting stronger. He's just grinding it out. He's he's literally almost turning into a psychopath in the show essentially, and then they have him like do this aura farming thing. Where when you read it instead, you're actually like seeing him be human. You see him like go interact with his sister. You see him go to his bank. You see him do all this stuff, and it might be like, well, why do you need to see that stuff? But it makes him more human and makes you understand the story more instead of it just being or a farming simulator. And I think that's why a lot of people don't actually like solo leveling is because the anime in itself becomes like or a farming simulator. Now, I do, like I said, I do think there is some plot holes in the story 100% that could be overwritten, but I think solo leveling is probably the best one that I've read or watched that breaks it down very, very easily. And I know this video is all over the place, but that's because there's just so much to actually talk about in general, and I'm not trying to just spoil the entire show or spoil what's going to happen. But like a good example of this in the show, by the way, is so when he first accepts the deal with his partner to basically go and raid these dungeons, there's actually a scene that they completely cut out where he goes to the bank and he kind of almost has this like freak out moment where he's like, "Whoa, I have that much money? No way!" And that kind of leads into him being able to like buy fried chicken and buy beer and all this stuff is because he basically comes into a lot of money all of a sudden without even like he realizes it, but it's a shock because the premise of his character was he was poor, struggling, and had to work his entire life. So when you're talking about like how good it is versus how bad it is, I don't really think it's that simple. I think there's bad parts, but I also think there's really good parts, and I think a lot of the good parts they're completely cutting out of the show just in general. I mean, we'll take a little bit of spoilers here, but when they're going into the Ant arc where they're raiding Juju Island and all of the S rank hunters are like fighting for their life, they don't really show the scene too much of why he left or why he wasn't there. Like they kind of do, like they insinuate, oh, he wants to spend time with his mom, but they don't show like the scene of him dipping out. They don't show like him freaking out because he's like, oh, I was probably supposed to be there. They don't show those scenes, and I think that it's something that makes the show like 10 billion times worse. If you were watching the show and that's it, and you like don't understand the context, you don't understand the background too much, I feel like it adds this point in the show where you're like, why? So he just like randomly decided to like go there now, like he already knew they were gonna die. It's such a weird aspect, I guess, to think about, and this continues throughout the entire series, where basically there's just moments where it feels like there's a gap in something that makes zero sense. And most of these gaps are either insinuated because of the anime, or it's insinuated because it's in the manga, or it's insinuated, or the manhwa, sorry, or it's insinuated because it's in the light novel. And each one of these is very slightly different in their own way, to the point where like those little details really do add up like at the end of the day, and I think that's something that's like kind of sad. It's kind of sad to see something that in my opinion it is written fairly well uh basically have so many out of context situations, out of context scenes, to the point where it kind of almost makes you question if like it's being animated properly, if that makes sense. Now, I will say when it gets a little bit later on, like very, very, very late on in the series, this is going to be spoilers for anybody who hasn't read it. Going to try not to spoil as much as possible. But basically, later in the series, there is a time reversal part where they reverse time to help save lives, essentially. And this scene, every single time I have read it, confuses me because honestly, I can't understand it. The entire show they build him up to where he doesn't care about anybody besides like his family, his close friends, the basic people around him, and then there's this arc where they, like I said, they do this time reversal, and that scene to this day still doesn't make sense. So if people saw that as like the first scene in the series, I'd 100% say it's a bad series. And that's not being harsh on the series as an overall. It's just that that scene in particular makes zero sense to me. How you have a guy who's aura farming, seems to not care, nonchalant, 6'7" dreadhead, trying to walk around, do some aura farming, and all of a sudden now he wants to reverse time to help save people on the Earth. Like, come on, like let's be a little bit realistic. I would understand if he had a significant other or one of his friends or family perish, and then he wanted to reverse time. But from what I remember, that doesn't happen. He just does it for the love of the game, to basically just be like, yeah, I kind of feel bad for people now, and it's just such a weird moment that kind of plays out. And not only on top of this, but then like they started adding his son stuff in. So this is like way, way, way late down the line. So they started adding his son stuff in, and I think that's also when stuff gets a little bit trippy because the end of solo leveling is like it ends pretty well. I would say, I think big spoilers here. So when him and basically the blonde haired hunter get married, I'm blanking the name right now, but when him and the blonde haired hunter get married, and then like he's already defeated all of the other universes, and he's already the Shadow Monarch and already has a infinite army at his disposal of infinite dragons, infinite ice elves, infinite everything. So it doesn't make logical sense in my brain what could come after that. Like, yeah, his son could initially inherit his power. I 100% agree with that because I think it would make sense. But it's like, what are you fighting? You already fought interdimensional beings. What are you fighting at this point? It would, I guess, the best way to put it would be like the Avengers fighting something other than Thanos. Like they make a brand new Avengers movie with the exact same cast, exact same like everybody in the Avengers, but they're fighting anybody else besides Thanos. Like it feels so insignificant compared to like anything else. And I guess that's why I think I read something recently that like the writer said that anything after the series isn't official because like it wouldn't make sense for it to be official. But yeah, this is just kind of what I want to talk about today. Was just some gripes I have with Solo Leveling because I'm rewatching it right now. Figured it'd be a fun thing to watch, and honestly, it is overall a really good series. I don't want to take away from that at all. I just think that they have so many plot holes that you can definitely tell it's a manhwa, and that's the best way I can put it. Like you can tell it's a manhwa because, or like a light novel. They're borderline the same thing. Like let's be honest here, but like when a manhwa is introduced in a certain way, they just have so many gaps in it that it's kind of just expected. Like there's so many manhwa I'll start reading and I'll read it and I'll be like, well, what's going on here? And it'll be like such a bad gap that like you actually have to like restart the series or like completely drop it because genuinely it makes zero sense whatsoever. But yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. Oh, one thing it does do really, really well in the story that a lot of people don't give it enough praise for, I will say before we end this video, is showing what everything means, And like the first episode, you get introduced to what the Hunter Association is, what the Hunters are, what the Gates are, who Sun Jinwoo is, his sister, his mom. You get introduced to like his love interest. You get introduced to the other guilds. You basically get introduced to everything besides America, obviously, which doesn't come until like way later down the line. But you get introduced to everything very quickly. I actually do really like that. A lot of stories are really bad about not introducing their characters properly and then just being like, yeah, here's a character, he's in front of you, and you're like, uh, okay. Um, so it's always interesting. I will say, I'm a person who watches all my anime and like sub and dub. It doesn't really matter to me. It depends on what I'm doing. You know, like let's say I'm working on a video editing or something like that. I'm probably gonna watch an anime and dub because I can't read and edit a video. Uh, but one of the things that does bother me in solo leveling is some of the voice acting is just words that would never be said in a million years, which probably does take away from the story a little bit more as well, outside of the stuff that I mentioned. But yeah, it's so interesting. If you haven't seen solo leveling, definitely would go check it out, or read the manhwa or the light novel. Both are really good. You can even look them up on YouTube and like have like AI read it to you if you really want, or not AI, but like have like you guys know like the narrator voice. It's not really AI, it's text to speech. Read it to you if you want that as well, like a light book or something like that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace.